Let's jump into the first big news from Timcast.com. Biden admin has suspended the Disinformation Governance Board. The board's executive director, Jankowicz, announced her departure from the Department of Homeland Security. So just right off the bat, it was a terrible idea. I don't think he's doing this because of free speech. I think it's polling poorly among Democrats. Bill Maher came out on his show and said, these are not bright people in government. So when you get Bill Maher on his show to a million liberals saying this is bad, don't be surprised then when they're like, oh, we got a midterm coming up and we're losing.
Well, wait, I mean, how do we know this is true or not if Biden suspended the Disinformation Board?
Well, we do know it. In fact, there was a question about it today in the White House press conference with the new press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. Peter Doocy asked if perhaps the Disinformation Governance Board was suspended due to disinformation.
Well, there we go.
And without a governance board, how would we know
and
this info or not?
Jean-Pierre basically confirmed that, yes, there was misinformation surrounding the Disinformation Governance Board, that a lot of people had slammed it.
It's the perfect crime.
It's the perfect crime, yeah, that a lot of people had slammed it. It was actually pretty amazing to see this come down today.
That's misinformation. I don't believe it. No, I mean that seriously. That they were like, oh, people were spreading lies about it, so we had to shut it down. No.
No, it was obviously not lies. It was obvious that people were spreading truth about it. In fact, the head of the Ministry of Truth, the Minister of Truth, Jankowicz, had spread substantial amounts of misinformation all by herself on her own feeds. And it was spectacular because as soon as she came out on Twitter and announced that this is what she'd been working on for the last 7 months, Jack Posobiec went out there and just started pulling all of her old tweets and all of her old things where she was talking about Russia collusion and all of these things, COVID things. And she was like just spreading misinformation and disinformation all over the place.
You know what? I really hope her and James Lindsay end up in a musical together.
Yes.
Did you guys see her singing?
Okay.
The whole thing. People were like making fun of her. I was like, dude,
That
make
would
fun
be
of her for
pretty
the
wild.
misinformation.
Oh,
Don't
I
make
know.
fun of her for singing.
Yeah.
Well, the political singing was real cringe.
Ugh.
When she did the Mary Poppins political thing,
my
I was like,
gosh.
come on.
That's no good.
What are we doing here?
I don't know, convince me.
But the actual, she got ragged on by the caller. I defended her when she was doing that, what do I got to do to be famous bit? I'm like, yeah, it was good. Ian, I thought her singing was good. Because it's not political. She was just doing a bit. And she was like, I want to be famous. And then Ian was like, no, she's got her shoulders up and tight. She's not singing from the chest. She doesn't know what she's doing. And I'm like.
Which is hilarious because like usually Ian goes easier on people, even when they say things politically that we very much disagree with. But she's singing wrong. He's like, no, this is absolutely not. Like we cannot let this stand.
He took theater.
Yeah, exactly.
So he was like, I am offended by this.
Like that's his
You know what?
area.
I studied theater for pretty much my entire life, and I actually thought that it was kind of cute that she was into doing performance art, even though she had this weird government career. I didn't have an issue with with that singing. I did have an issue with her COVID misinformation Mary Poppins song. I thought that was total trash.
It's weird how when we were young, the adults who were writing books about this stuff, when we weren't even alive, the books that were coming out were like the future dystopia. Men have steel jaws from the war and metal limbs and cyborgs rule all. And the government comes and bangs a giant sword on the ground. Do as you're told. And what we really got was this permanent child who's singing Mary Poppins going, we're gonna block your news. And it's like, it's substantially creepier. Millennials aren't growing up.
No, but they don't want to. And in part, millennials aren't growing up because adults have told them that adulthood is bad. We come up with words like adulting as though there's some problem with responsibility. And it's like, just grow up, be responsible.
Why?
It's not bad. The thing, too, is it's like when you were a kid. Remember when you were a kid and everyone wanted to grow up? I don't know if you guys had that. And people were like, oh, I could buy all the toys I want. I'll get to eat all the candy that I want. And it's like now
it's like, yeah, you do get to do that. I mean, of course.
It turns out you do. Like, I buy ice cream and I put it in my fridge. In my freezer, and then we eat it.
When I was like 20, I just one day was like, what's one thing I always thought I would do and never did? I'm going to go to the store and buy a whole thing of cookie dough and just walk around eating it.
Nice.
So I went to the grocery store. I grabbed a thing of cookie dough. I bought it, started eating it, and some little kid saw me, and he went, oh. As he walked, as I walked past, it gets better. And I'm like, I looked at it and I was like,
Heck
that's right. And I bite it, and then 5 minutes later I went,
Oh, no.
I didn't see the aftermath.
like, this is why my parents said you don't do these things.
By the way, I meant James O'Keefe, not James Lindsay. When
I was
I'm so
confused.
sorry. No, not
That's
James.
what
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about like his sword movement.
Yeah, no,
me
James
too.
Lindsay would never be in a musical.
No, only
Maybe.
swords.
You
no,
know-
they wouldn't allow it.
That's
No,
funny
so-
because I pictured James O'Keefe when you said James Lindsay
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I knew that he had done the
He's
thing.
all about musical theater.
That would be funny too because the left thinks James O'Keefe is just like the king of disinformation and manipulation, and the right calls Nina Jankowicz the minister of truth.
I think what we have
Romeo
right
and
here.
Juliet with James O'Keefe and Nina Jankowicz.
What we have is a Broadway show. Like what we need is investors. That's all we need. This would sell out.
How much do we need? I'll fund it.
Right? Like what do we need for a Broadway show? Like start with $500,000, something
Done.
like that. Let's
Sign
do
it. So here's my serious question though is, when you look at the DHS Disinformation Board and you look at Nina Jankowicz, they literally put a child in charge of the Department of Homeland Security. And the issue is the adults, people who are more mature and more understanding, aren't in these jobs.
Well, what they did was they put a fool in charge of the Department of Homeland Security. They put Mayorkas in charge.
Yeah.
And he came out shortly after Biden was inaugurated and said to immigrants all across the world, we're not saying don't come, we're saying don't come now. And then he proceeded to deny that repeatedly that he had said it. And he did say it, and he did mean it. And that's why we have so many people storming the border.
Yeah,
I got a good idea for a cartoon you could do, Seamus.
Yeah, is this about Biden saying come
No.
and tell me? Okay.
It is the Disinformation Board announcing they're shutting down, and then all the journalists are like writing it down, and they're like breaking news. And as they're doing it, Nina Jankowicz presses a button, and then the whole stage like goes down into a sub base where it's like they walk in, and the general's like, "We've increased your funding by $3 billion." And so
No,
like the whole thing was just disinformation.
No, they're going, the misinformation board's going out of business. All our misinformation has to go. Misinformation on the dollar. 20% off all misinformation.
That's clever. I like that.
And then you highlight Nina Jankowicz's tweets and the things she said.
Oh, my God.
It's funny because when she said that thing about the laptop, she's like, Joe Biden says 50 different people said this. It was like, it was clearly disinformation or misinformation, whichever one you want to pick. And she was like, I was just quoting the president. It's like, okay, so by your standard, you are spreading disinformation. Thank you.
Yes.
Did you correct it? No.
I mean, was
No.
that an excuse if Trump said something that was adjudicated to have been false by the fact checkers? Could you say, I was just repeating what the president said?
Well, no,
not misinformation.
no.
Actually, as you know, whenever Trump would make a claim and the media called him a liar, he would just say, well, that's what I was
That's
told.
what I was told, quite
and then the media
frankly.
would go, oh, we get it. We'll retract that.
Like Trump, Trump was in fact told that. He was.
Actually, it's a funny thing. What if a journalist, Donald Trump said, this will cost X amount of dollars, and they're like, how does that make sense? That's not true. Well, that's what I was told. So a journalist actually investigates, and they find the person who told Trump that, and they're like, fact check, true. Donald Trump was told this.
It was Corn
But-
Pop. They formed an alliance.
Yes.
behind the scenes.
Definitely.
I'm trying to understand who this was originally angled to try to appeal to in the Biden administration. Was it the MSNBC liberals? I don't understand.
Do you think it was to appeal to anyone, or do you think it was just to try to shut people up?
Well, what they were actually trying to do, if you look at what their documentation says in the first place, their goal was to dispel disinformation outside of the U.S. Dispel
Russian disinfo, right?
No, like about immigration and stuff. So months and months ago, the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, had talked about how one of the Biden administration's plans to get people to stop trying to come to the U.S. illegally was to give proper information in those locales to tell them, like, actually don't come. So I think this was part of that effort. That was sort of the idea. But there's so little goodwill for the Biden administration at this point. They spread all kinds of ridiculous misinformation and disinformation that coming out with something like this, they had no chance. It doesn't, if they had come out and said, this is part of our plan to get immigrants to not come to the U.S., we're going to tell them not to come, and gave it some sort of name like that, it would have been much better received, I think, because a lot of people would like there to be more security at the border.
Yeah, well, I mean, their entire regime depends upon spreading misinformation, right? When they came out and were saying things like, the reason we have higher prices is because store owners are greedy.
Right.
And it's Putin's fault that we have high gas prices. I mean,
Joe Biden said that to tackle inflation, we're going to make the corporations, or what do you say, make the rich
pay more taxes.
And then Peter Doocy was like, how does making rich people pay more taxes lower inflation?
Well, that counters all
There's
of their
no-
arguments about how rich people don't. They also say rich people don't stimulate spending; they just hoard all the money.
My
So
fa-
they-
by
and
that
they-
logic, taxing them could never
My-
curb inflation.
My favorite is
It's not
that
in
Joe Biden
circulation.
launched his campaign off of misinformation.
And also, they want
The
to
Charlottesville stuff.
Yeah, they sure did. He sure did. And Rittenhouse and everything. He lied about that.
Not to mention that he's run before the Charlottesville ever happened. He ran
Hey,
like
wait,
five
hold on.
times. So
And he's-
does
and
that
he's-
matter?
He's lied all the time and he's plagiarized everything.
Yep.
And he's
Exactly.
going to come out and be like, I'm going to tackle disinformation. I came up with that. And then it's like there's a guy standing next to him who's like writing it down and he's like, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. It's pathetic. It's just that this is a regime which repeatedly says things that are verifiably untrue. I mean, we're not just talking about a situation where someone might be using facts which are true to construct a narrative that we disagree with. Like saying that businesses are raising their prices just because of corporate greed is an unbelievably insane and easily falsifiable thing to say. Did businesses just get greedy after we flooded the economy with extra money?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. I've been fact checked.
There you
They're
go.
all greedy.
Yeah,
You know,
they're
but
super
they-
greedy. That's why they're trying so hard to hire people
Yeah, well, and that's
and offering all of these signing bonuses to do so.
and what's fascinating to me is like they just became greedy after a bunch of money was injected into the economy. Like that's when they decided to become greedy and raise prices. Interesting.
Also, it's interesting that Biden administration is currently looking to reduce sanctions on Venezuela in order to gain oil exports from that country, as though Venezuela is some perfectly fine place. Like, why did we have sanctions? They haven't made any changes.
It's sad
It's
that
just that we
couldn't
want their
force them
stuff.
to pump.
Yeah.
And same with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
If it was Donald Trump, I think we would have been able to get something out of the Saudis, but might be a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.